Welcome to our channel. Russian President Vladimir Putin completely changed the balance of conflict all over the world with the flare that he fired on February 24th. Putin's own alleged aim was to keep the NATO away from the borders of its own territory and to intimidate all NATO member countries, along with his invasion attempt to Ukraine by removing NATO from its borders. Although Putin tried to present it as a result of Ukraine's actions, Putin's war was the cause of NATO expansion, not the result. Aggression in Eastern Europe began at its peak, but Putin's plan did not work, and Ukraine put up admirable resistance, exhausting the feared deterrent of the Russian military. With this war, everyone has begun to accept that Russia is a much greater threat than ever before. The first measures against the Russian threat began to be taken in Eastern Europe. A NATO military force concentrated on Poland drew attention. Poland was determined as the first stronghold against a possible Russian aggression. As NATO suddenly increased the number of its forces in Eastern Europe beyond the Cold War era, it came to the fore in the peril in the Baltic Sea. Russian warships lost their dominance in the Black Sea with the Ukrainian war. However, the Russian Navy carried out many dangerous exercises and attempts to make its presence felt in the Baltic Sea. While NATO increased its presence in the Baltic Sea in the face of these attempts, the official applications of Finland and Sweden to join NATO gave Putin the first shock. These two countries, which made a serious adaptation to NATO, severely restricted Russia's moves in the Baltic. The Baltic Sea is now more critical than ever, and the Baltic and Scandinavian countries are taking major measures with all alliance forces to deter Russian aggression. Particularly, joint exercises carried out by Finland one after another imprisoned the Russian Navy in the port of St. Petersburg. The main reason for these exercises was that Russia did not hesitate to retaliate against NATO countries in the Baltic, nor the countries and their exercises in the Baltic Sea, even though Russia could not react to this move due to the losses it suffered in the war in Ukraine. Finland intends to close the narrowest strait of the Russian port of St. Petersburg to the Baltic, in partnership with Estonia, its closest NATO ally in the Baltic Sea. Finland seems intent on closing the strait between its port city of Helsinki and the Estonian port of Tallinn. The strait could completely close the Baltic connection to the Russian port of St. Petersburg. The deployment of powerful anti-ship missiles by Finland and Estonia to the Baltic coasts in partnership with Sweden, the doubling of security and defense forces in Sweden's strategic island of Gotland, the deployment of the most powerful coastal and missile defense systems and submarines to the field may seriously lock up the Russian Baltic Navy. Since last year, the activity of the Russian Navy and Air Force in the Baltic has increased tremendously. During the 9-month period during the Ukraine war and before, Russian warships, submarines, warplanes and drones made moves that increased the tension on the Baltic. These moves were written in the past as dangerous attempts to violate the air and sea borders of the Nordic and Baltic states. Especially after Sweden and Finland's official application to NATO, we see that Russian harassment has increased significantly. Against this situation, NATO is rapidly protecting Sweden and Finland under its own roof, and Finland, Sweden and Estonia seem to make every effort to close the Baltic Sea to Russia. This seems to happen with the Freezing Winds exercise, because this exercise is one of the most magnificent exercises NATO has held in the Baltic for many years. During the exercise in the Gulf of Finland and Archipelago sea regions, 23 warships and approximately 5,000 NATO, Finnish and Swedish troops participated in different scenarios. This provided participants with a challenging program in a wide range of naval warfare skills, from air defense to mine countermeasures and from submarine warfare to counter-surface measures. Regional topography and seasonal weather conditions also provided intensive training opportunities in terms of maritime navigation. Participating countries, including observers, were Finland, Belgium, Denmark, Estonia, France, Germany, Lithuania, the Netherlands, Norway, Sweden, the United Kingdom, and the United States. The exercise, which was held at a distance of approximately 50 to 100 kilometers from St. Petersburg, was interpreted as one of NATO's biggest demonstrations of strength against Russia. War analysts follow the exercise closely and admit that it turned into a show. The Indian Navy's large-scale exercises, Crying Wings, began in the Gulf of Finland and the Archipelago Sea. The exercises will take more than a week. Military personnel from France, Germany, Sweden and the USA will also take part. The purpose of the Freezing Wings exercise is to conduct a joint operation off the Finnish coast and in the Baltic waters, and to teach the military to provide and receive international aid. 23 warships, technical fleet ships, navy units and infantry from Finland and NATO participated in the exercises. Freezing Wings employs approximately 5,000 people. This exercise of 23 warships seems to have put enough fear into the heart of the Russian army. The Kremlin explained that it felt a provocation for such a large fighting force to be so close to the Russian border. Flight activity in southern Finland and the northern Baltic Sea will be high during the exercise. In other words, the Baltic Sea area is protected by NATO warplanes while carrying out a very serious warforce exercise from the sea. One of the serious contributions of Finland's participation in NATO was these exercises. Similar activities had been done before, but Finland, which has joined NATO, has now started to swing NATO's hammer in the Baltic. Finland is in the process of joining NATO due to the new security environment created in Europe after Russia's invasion of Ukraine. As a result, in the spring of 2022, Finland applied to join the Western Alliance, subverting the previous military mismatch security paradigm built on a capable national defense, bilateral security partnerships with NATO and EU countries, and a working relationship with Russia. Finland's NATO membership is very critical and strategic for both the Baltic states, NATO, and Russia. The biggest advantages Finland brings to alliance defense is the strategic situation in the North Baltic Sea, including the Gulf of Finland. The small bay is home to some of the world's busiest sea routes, including passenger ferries, oil and gas exports, and other commercial shipping. It is the gateway to the oceans for ships traveling to and from the St. Petersburg region, and a transit route for naval vessels passing between the two major bases of Russia's Baltic fleet. These are the Baltic in the Kaliningrad exclave and the Kronstadt outside St. Petersburg. In the face of Russian aggression in August 2022, Finland and Estonia took action to corner the Russian Navy in the Baltic Sea with a joint defense cooperation. Estonian Defense Minister Hanno Pevkur's announcement to the Finnish tabloid Iltalehti that Finland and Estonia have reached an agreement on the integration of coastal defenses could be a heavy blow to Russia's ambitions in the Baltic Sea in the event of war. With this defense cooperation, Russia's movements in both Kaliningrad and St. Petersburg are restricted. Finland makes a significant contribution to NATO's defense capabilities. Finland's artillery forces are the largest and best equipped in Western Europe and will be an important strategic asset for the alliance. With around 1,500 artillery guns, including 700 howitzer cannons, 700 heavy mortars, and 100 rocket launch systems, Finnish artillery has more firepower than the combined armies of Poland, Germany, Norway and Sweden can currently muster. Europe's largest artillery training ground, Rovajärvi, and other training sites in northern Finland offer NATO strategic military opportunities for skills training, with a large number of artillery pieces still dominating the area. The contemporary battlefield NATO enlargement inherently creates more defensive space for the alliance, which may reduce the alliance's defense capabilities. However, Finland has the capacity to provide its defense and will make a net contribution, not a burden, to security. As a NATO member, Finland is on the alliance's northeastern flank, particularly St. Petersburg, the Baltic Sea, and Russia's Arctic near the Kola Peninsula offer strong defenses. This defense strategy brings Finland's value in NATO and its high brand value to a more meaningful point. This ally, which strengthens the hand of the West, puts Russia in a serious geopolitical bottleneck. NATO held an exercise at this point, right after reports were received that it had set its sights on the Suwalki region between Poland and Belarus in order to cut down on shipments to Finland, Sweden, Latvia, Lithuania, and Estonia. Despite Russian President Vladimir Putin's production of a thesis for all kinds of activities in the region, NATO's encounter with antithesis shows us that Russia is left without a move on its western border. Vladimir Putin's plan on February 24th caused him great troubles both in Ukraine, in Eastern Europe, in the Black Sea, and in the Baltic. There is not much he can do in this region anymore, and considering that Russia needs about a quarter of a century to renew its consumed military equipment, NATO's strong stance clearly shows that Putin has no time for a new move. Thanks for watching us.